And that's very dangerous because it has got to be something we create for ourselves so that we are in control and not outsourcing it to someone else.
Welcome back to The Highly Sensitive Woman. Today's guest is a woman I met when I was going through my divorce and moving back to Indiana and really just starting my life over. She is also the person who introduced me to the term, the highly sensitive person, and I finally began to have language and a better understanding of myself and how I am wired. Who knew all of these years later she would be my guest on the Highly Sensitive Woman podcast? Please welcome Diane McDowell.
Hi, it's so awesome to be on your podcast. I love it.
Oh, I am thrilled and honored that you are here. And before we jump into the questions and all of the wisdom that you have to share with the listener, could you just share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
So I am a therapist times 25 years, and I've started moving into the coaching industry more. And I really focus on relationships. It's really become my area of expertise and this concept of the brain hijack, which we'll get into more in a little bit. But I also am so fascinated. I am highly sensitive, but not near as highly sensitive as a lot of other people. But I am very fascinated with the concept of being highly sensitive in this world that is not necessarily designed for people that are highly sensitive. And kind of how do we take care of ourselves? How do we nurture ourselves? How do we protect our sensitivity and see it as an asset instead of something's wrong with me?
Yeah, and I feel like that right there is the key. And so many of us see it initially as something is wrong with us because, to your point, and I have said it over and over again on this podcast, that that's not the messaging that we necessarily receive, especially here in the United States. But one conversation at a time, we are changing that. And so I am thrilled that we're just going to keep that theme rolling with changing the perspective and really seeing our sensitivities as an asset and learning how to work with them, especially in the relationships that we have with other people. And, in the work that you do, one of the things that is critical is having emotional safety. And as highly sensitive women, that can be a little bit of a challenge because we're always picking up everything that's happening around us. And so I want to start with when someone comes to you and they want to have, some support with the relationships that they have and establishing emotional safety. What do they usually think is the problem when they first come to you? And what do you actually see that is the truth that's kind of underneath the surface?
So a lot of times people think that there's something wrong with me. I can't handle it. I'm too much. I'm too sensitive. And they've even been told, you're too sensitive. You shouldn't be worried about that. Why are you worried about that? So the story that they have told themselves, and maybe others have told them, is it's kind of a them issue. What I have found is it's really not an us issue. We're trying to be like people we are not. We see other people coping so well, and we're like, why can't I be like that? And we try to ignore what's really really causing us distress and minimize it and not listen to it and be like other people and thinking we should be able to handle it differently. We should be better at it than we are.
And I know from personal experience, I have done that time and time and time again. And I know for me, what ended up happening as a result. But what do you see over and over as kind of a pattern with your clients, that when they're trying to be something or handle a situation in a way that they are not, what happens next?
So I call it what you resist will persist. So we get in a tug of war and we actually create more of it. The more we dislike a part of us, the more we try to exile that part of us, the more we actually pull it into us because we create this tug of war, this I hate you, but you're part of me. And why can't you go away? And we just create this tension, which actually creates more of it. So instead, what we need to do is learn how to lean into it, allow it, accept it as part of us. It's kind of the idea of the shadow work, the things we don't like about ourselves, learning how to bring them into us and lean into them so that we stop the tug of war. So we stop creating that tension with that part of us.
And the tug of war you're talking about, that's an internal tug of war. It is not a tug
Yes.
of war with the person we're having the relationship with.
It's internal, but I actually ask people to visualize, like visualize dropping the rope with yourself instead of being in this emotional tug of war in yourself, being like, why am I like this? I shouldn't be like this. You just drop the rope and you're like, lean into it. So there isn't this tension that you're creating.
And when you're talking about that internal tug of war and that tension, is that your brain is hijacked in relationships, or is that something different?
So what happens with the brain hijack? So it's a little bit it's the same idea, but it's a little bit different. So if you think about back in the day when we first became humans, we had to belong to a community. We would not survive. We could not survive if the community exiled us. So our brain literally says when we think somebody's going to reject us or a relationship's not going the way we think it should, our brain literally starts screaming danger, danger, and goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That is the hijack where our brain starts actually going, this I'm in danger when we're not in danger, but our brain will go to attack mode. So learning how to reground ourselves, give ourselves 5 seconds, 3 seconds to breathe and calm down, then we can unhijack, and then we no longer see the person that we love or care about as the threat.
What are some signs that we know that we are in that kind of hijacked state?
These are pretty much the same for everybody, but people don't recognize them. So a lot of times our jaw tightens, our shoulders tighten, our breathing changes. It gets more shallow. Our chest and arms will often tighten. So it's it's a body reaction change that most of us actually don't even realize. We don't notice it. So that's where I was saying if you can take a pause and notice your body, then you can slow it down. The answer to all of this is if you can slow it all down, slow your brain down, slow your body down. What most of us and highly sensitive people are a little bit different because a lot of highly sensitive people are aware of what's happening in their body. And so they are aware of it first, but some aren't. So really getting in touch with what's happening in my body and where is it happening?
And when that's happening in the moment that you're having maybe some conflict with a partner, or maybe you're not even like having a conversation, but internally you're having conflict with your partner, because I have certainly been in that state where we're having a full-blown argument in my head and nothing is coming out, but I'm definitely having the physical response. What are some things that you can do like in that moment to slow it down and to kind of bring yourself to the state where you can address it? Because I know not addressing it does not help any of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay. So the first thing I would say is ground yourself and get in your body. The second, and this is kind of moving farther on, but one of the things I really teach is emotional safety. And what often happens is we outsource emotional safety and we say, if they would be different, if they would do whatever different, then I could feel safe. But that is making our emotional safety based off of someone else. And that's very dangerous because it has got to be something we create for ourselves so that we are in control and not outsourcing it to someone else. So we have to first take ownership that it is my responsibility to create my own emotional safety. I cannot be expecting someone else to do that for me. Then, so the first part, and it sounds kind of harsh, but it is very true that if I own it, then I have control over it. If I outsource it, I don't have control over it. So that's the first thing. Then the next thing is start to become the wise watcher. Just start to notice the thoughts you're having. I wouldn't suggest it right away, but one of the things I have people do is list facts because our brain will get spinning and create so much stuff. And especially highly sensitive people, we're very in tune to other people. And so we see micro expressions and we go running with them. We have already made up a whole story. And here's what we know. Our our logical brain that we're talking with right now takes in about 50 bytes of information per second. Our nervous system, which is in our body, takes in 11 million. So our nervous system, highly sensitive people are more in tune to their nervous system a lot of times. And so they are taking in so much information and they're overloaded and overwhelmed with it. And they make stories in their brain that aren't necessarily true. So one of the things I have people do is listing facts to help clean up all the drama. If it is not a provable fact, then it's brain drama.
Yeah, that's something that I do with my clients too. It's just kind of that brain dump and just getting all of the thoughts that are happening out, and doing that with pen and paper because your hand can't move as fast as your brain. And then just, looking back at the list without judgment, but just some curiosity of, that was an interesting thought. I wonder why I made that particular thing mean that. And it is a fascinating exercise for sure. And one that I know I personally have benefited from, and certainly my clients as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if you don't have a pen and paper, if you're just standing, if you're like sitting there having a conversation at the table or something, you can ask yourself, is this a fact? So just getting used to asking yourself, because that will help. What I teach is there's two things in our brain, facts or drama. If it's not a fact, it's drama.
I want to go back to something that you said about emotional safety and how it is our responsibility to ensure that we have that emotional safety. And when we're talking about relationships, especially with people we're really close to, like our family, our closest friends, our life partners, can one person create emotional safety for the relationship, the couple as a whole, or does it really require both people to buy into that concept?
So I can create emotional safety for myself. And when I do that, I change the whole dynamics. Relationships are a feedback loop and we feed off of each other. So when my nervous system is grounded and I create safety for me, then I automatically create safety for the relationship. I cannot create safety for the other person though, but I create safety for the relationship. And here's how. If I am not going to get hijacked, if I am in grounded and I am capable of not saying things that I'll regret later, then I will not damage my half of the relationship. I can't own the other person's, but I 100% can own mine.
So many times, women especially, and then you add the highly sensitive layer on top of that, we kind of take on the responsibility for owning ours and the other person's, and we tend to kind of overfunction in our relationships and kind of carry the emotional weight of the relationship, and step into a lot of people pleasing because we try to circumvent some of that conflict. And again, I have experienced this personally. I've seen it with my clients, and I just know that there is a huge hidden cost to being the emotionally responsible one. What are some tips that you have in relationships to kind of step out of that over functioning without becoming disconnected or cold? Because I think that's our biggest concern, is if I don't do it this way, then I'm going to go like to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And now I'm going to be, this version of myself that I really don't like.
Yeah. And that is a really good point. And what I try to teach, what I teach people is emotional safety is staying in the room, even when it's difficult, without checking out. And that's the part you're talking about. It's easy for people to shut down and check out, but stay physically present. But I'm talking about without checking out. Stay in the room and not checking out. Being able to hear what they're saying, reflect back what they're saying, and stay in your body, stay grounded so that you don't take offense. Because when you are creating your own emotional safety, and I'll give you a quick story because I do share it in some of my work, so it's not like too personal. But when you create your own emotional safety, you don't get triggered and you don't take on their emotions. So my husband and I, and this was only, I don't know, probably a year ago. My husband and I had a disagreement during the day about parenting my son. Our son, was 15 at the time, and we're laying in bed, and he says to me, sometimes I don't know why you're here." And I felt myself bristle and I wanted to get defensive. And I was like, no, he's hurting. This is one of those, if I can stay grounded. And so I took some breaths and I just said, I love you and I totally get it. And that was it. I could have totally been like pissed and got a whole fight going. But when I stay emotionally safe and I realize it has nothing to do with me, it has to do with his pain and his experience, and then I can stay in a place of love. I could have also detached and shut down and not said anything. But when you can keep your own emotional safety, then you can stay present with their pain without getting sucked into it. And you don't make it mean there's something wrong with you or you did something wrong.
So, not to say that this is what you were feeling in that moment, because I certainly don't want to put words or feelings in your mouth, but let's just say someone's partner says something to them from a place of hurting themselves, right? And we receive it as hurtful. How can we kind of acknowledge the other person's pain and our own simultaneously?
I suggest people actually say, ow, that hurt. I love just acknowledging it. Ow, that hurt. But you got to be careful because you saying, ow, that hurt might trigger them going deeper. So you got to make sure that you are able to hold space. And this is where creating your own emotional safety. If I say something and they kind of attack back, can I stay grounded? And maybe that's where you need to take a pause and not say anything for a minute and just be with your pain and be like, I'm going to sit with it, lean into and feel that pain. And then when I allow that pain to move through me, then I can say something to him. But the problem is if I let what I want to see happen with my clients is you let the pain move through you and not from you. So you don't want to be reacting and to be shooting out the pain, but you want it to move through and pass on.
Yeah, I think that's such a good distinction. And again, so often because we, as women, but especially highly sensitive women, we try to take on the emotional safety of the relationship as a whole and like take on that responsibility. And we're also very, very good people pleasers. And so a lot of times we don't do either one of those things, right? Like we don't react from pain. We shove that down, but then we don't allow ourselves to really process and move through it and revisit the conversation later from a place of I'm okay, like I've created emotional safety and we still need to address this.
And I would say sometimes, this is my theory. I think sometimes we talk too much in not taking action. And so it may be that you revisit it and talk about it, but it may be you just say later, hey, I wanted to let you know, like we don't have to have a conversation about this, but I wanted to let you know that that was really hurtful in my mind. And then we can let it go. A lot of times I think we feel like we have to process and solve. And John Gottman talks about, I think it's 47% of all conflict is never resolved. And so sometimes it's not necessarily going to be resolved, but we learn how to speak our truth and let it go.
Absolutely. I want to shift a little bit, or maybe it's following right into this perfectly, but you talk about the brain to heart code in relationships. So could you share a little bit about what that means, what that looks like in practice, and how we can start using it?
Okay. So one of the things, the reason I call it brain to heart is because so many of us like to stay in our brain. And so if you think about our brain gives us sentences, and that's how it communicates. The body gives us sensations, but we need to move out of our brain and into our body. Highly sensitive people tend to be better at this. We can know our sensations, where they are, we can describe them, usually better than other people. But we still got to be able to get out of our head and stop, especially during conflict. When there is conflict, we humans love to think and think and think. I use the story of when me and my husband used to get into arguments, I would go for a drive. And when I was driving, I would just say all the horrible things I could think of about my husband. And what I realized was that was actually damaging me. Every time I did that, I was actually damaging me and my relationship with him in my mind. And so I started switching it to when I go driving, I remind myself of all the things that I love about him and why I'm in this relationship. And that changed my energy so that when I came back, and even on the drive, I could come back to a place of love. And it's not just loving him, it's loving me because I need to be in a place of love to be able to experience and share love. So the brain to heart code is the process of getting out of our brain and into our heart and into our body. And so the first thing I teach is become the wise watcher. So it's like 5 steps. The first is become the wise watcher. Notice your thoughts. And that's the first step to ending the brain hijack. Then I teach words as neutral, learning how to see words and they're just words as neutral. Like a lot of times we go, that tone, that stance they had. And so we have all these things that we've made it negative, and it is so powerful to just be like, they're words. What I make them mean is up to me. And this is part of creating emotional safety. When I see words as neutral, I can create safety. When I'm like, they're mad at me, oh my gosh, I have to fix this, then we uproot our safety. One of the things I teach people to do is ask, is it mine? Is it theirs? Or is it God's? If it's mine, I need to address it. If it's theirs, I have no business in it. If it's God's, I have no business in it.
I love that. If someone really was like, okay, I recognize so many of these things that Diane has been mentioning today, and I want to start making changes, but I don't really know exactly where to start. There have been so many good tools. What's the first one that could just like right now you can take action today with this thing to start changing every relationship that you have?
So I am a big fan, and there's study after study that shows that visualization is so important. It is life changing. There is study after study that shows when people actually play piano or imagine playing piano, they are just as good or better if they are imagining it versus actually doing it. Rope climbing, weightlifting, all of it. So, and now weightlifting, our muscles aren't quite as strong as actually doing it, but we actually gain muscle by visualizing it. So our brain is so important. So what I teach is you find one tool that you feel like really speaks to you. And here's why. Everybody's in a different place. So what I think is the most important tool may not be the most important tool for you. So you find the one that is the most powerful for you where you're at right now. And then I suggest practicing it 5 times a day. And so morning and night, our brain is very influential. At morning and night, our brain is easily hypnotized, easily pliable because we're going from alpha to beta and beta to alpha sleep. So those are the best times to practice. And then breakfast, lunch, dinner. So I suggest practicing 5 times a day, visualizing, imagining, describing. The more detail you can get about what it looks like to create yourself this safety, then you will start to create it. The other thing I suggest doing is creating a relationship with your future self. 1 year from now, 3 years from now. And you start like asking her, how did she do it? What did she do? What was she wearing? Who was she talking to? What steps did she take? That future version of ourself is so much wiser than our current self.
My goodness, do I know that to be true? Because the person I was when I first met you could not have even begun to do any of the things that I'm currently doing, nor could I really envision her. It was kind of a blank, dark space. Like I had no idea, but just kind of taking one step forward, one tiny new skill, and I don't want to say tiny to diminish it by any means, because it may seem tiny on the surface level, but it's huge. Like any action that we can take and doing it from the place of what would my future self want. Goodness gracious. Even if you can't quite envision the future self, it's still a very useful tool.
Yeah. And I would say if you can't envision your future self, that makes it even more important because that means you haven't built that relationship. So just spend more time. And here's what I suggest, and this is what I do myself. I have a notepad in my phone that I put things that I'm working on in my mind. So when I have downtime at the grocery store, dropping off or picking up kids, I open my phone and go, oh, that's what I'm going to work on now. So I never waste time. As soon as I have downtime, I'm like, okay, what relationship with myself do I need to be building? And I pull out my notes and I decide which one I'm going to focus on.
Mm, that is a good one because we pretty much don't go anywhere without our phones these days, unless we intentionally don't, right? Which
Yes.
has its own value for sure. And I am the queen of that. But most of the time we have it. And while we've talked a lot about all sorts of relationships today, the one that we have with ourselves is most definitely the most important because we're never away from ourselves.
Yeah. And so spending time, what is my what do I want my relationship with myself to look like? When I first started doing private practice therapy, I would ask people, what is your relationship with yourself like? And people would be like, I don't really know what you're talking about. And so I had to like really be like, instead of asking that question, I switched it over to, have you thought about your relationship with yourself? Because a lot of people haven't. And so really starting to practice, like thinking about, I have a relationship with myself, and my relationship with myself, just like my relationship with everyone else, is in my brain. It's my thoughts about myself. And our relationship with other people are our thoughts about them.
And gosh, when you said my relationship with myself is about the thoughts that I have about myself, I think about how much my thoughts about myself and my sensitivity have changed. And as a result, the relationship that I have with myself, my confidence, all of those things have changed dramatically.
Yeah. And that comes down to, how do you talk to yourself? How do you think about yourself? How do you engage with yourself? Do you follow through on what you say you're going to do? All those things create your relationship with yourself.
Oh, Diane, this has been such a good conversation, and I always enjoy when we get to connect. If anyone listening wants to learn more about you and the work that you are doing, where can they find you?
Emotional Safety co.com. Again, that's emotionalsafetyco.com. And there's a quiz and a keynote you can watch. There's some free stuff on there that you can do.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. I'm going to try that again. Those of you who have been listening for a while know that I have a very persistent cold and cough that just won't go away. But thank you, Diane. And until next time, take care.